The Georgia Bulldogs beat the Clemson Tigers 34-3. A 31-point victory. Now, Josh Pate, on his show, formerly known as Late Kick, now it is the Josh Pate's College Football Show. He changed the name, got a new logo. Very impressive. Josh Pate always talks about talent. That's what he loves to talk about. And how recruiting is so important to the game, and it is. But you watch this game, and I will tell you what this game shows. This game shows you, it shows the whole college football world, that recruiting doesn't matter if you can't develop, if you can't coach, if you can't scheme. Clemson has a top 10 talent roster. They do. You know what they did with it? Nothing. You may say they have not recruited top 10 classes in 3 years, and I will give you the fact that they have a 5-star quarterback in Cade Klubnik, who is no better than Michigan's Davis Warren or Alex Orji, who were walk-ons or 3 stars out of high school and did not look good in Michigan's performance against Fresno State. That is what Clemson has at quarterback. A 5-star who plays like a walk-on and who can't do anything whatsoever with Matt Luke coaching talented offensive linemen, with tight ends and wide receivers who aren't great, but they aren't bad either, and I would argue they're good, and with a defense that's one of the nation's best and is much better recruited than the offense, by the way. The defense is one of the better recruited positions in all of the country. Can't do anything. Only scored 3 points. Only had 189 total yards. Had 1 turnover, a pick by Cade Klubnik. They ran for 2.1 yards per carry. Georgia only had 2 sacks, by the way, and 6 TFLs. It's not like they had 10 sacks, and that's the only reason why the rushing numbers were bad. Georgia owned Clemson. They owned them. I mean, Kirby Smart, I used this analogy the other day. What Kirby Smart did is he took Dabo Swinney and the entire Clemson program, like Bane took Batman in DC Comics, and he broke his back into 1,000 pieces and left him for dead on the street. That game was disgusting, especially when you factor in that Georgia was only up 6-0 at halftime and started off rather sluggish, clearly missing a player like Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington, the dominant tight ends that they had in 21, 22, and 23, mainly with Bowers there. Oscar Delp is a great tight end. He's one of the nation's best, but Bowers was a unicorn. It's like Ohio State with Marvin Harrison Jr. gone. You saw that in their Week 1 game. They do miss that type of player. Georgia, it'll take them time to adjust. But London Humphreys stepped up, Arian Smith stepped up, Nate Frazier at running back stepped up, and Carson Beck did well. And we'll talk about all of these players throughout analyzing and breaking down this game. But I really want to drive forward that point that recruiting sometimes, especially when you have a staff that doesn't adapt, that is obtuse, that is stiffed, what recruiting is can be getting gold paint and spray painting like a dried turd on the side of the road or a dead animal carcass on the highway, and you're spray painting it with gold and saying, look, it's a golden sculpture of, well, something, but it's gold. It's like, no, it's not. In fact, because of how bad the coaching is, there isn't even potential there. In order to access that potential, you need to throw it all out and bring someone new in. And maybe that's me being harsh on Clemson, but I like what Joe DeLeon said on his show, the Ruffino and Joe show. I actually think it was Blake Ruffino who said this. Dabo Swinney is, right now, Les Miles or Mark D'Antonio in the later years at their 10 years at LSU and Michigan State. Right now, this team is a waste of talent. They have top 10 talent with no offense and a defense that is near elite or elite, but doesn't develop as well as Iowa or Ohio State or Michigan or Georgia. Like they even could be better on defense despite how good they are. And the defense is not an area that I'm going to be criticizing much, but that offense is horrible. It's absolutely atrocious, and it has to be fixed. And Garrett Riley's in his second year, and they come out and they look the way they did against the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 14 team in the country loses to the number 1 team in the nation by 31 points, and it was with the number 1 team in the country playing a very sloppy game. Not impressive whatsoever. I don't think that right now Dabo Swinney's even a top 25 head coach. I don't think that. Not one bit. A top 25 head coach, Lance Leipold, Chris Kleiman, Mike Gundy, I would say James Franklin, I would say definitely Ryan Day, Jonathan Smith, Kyle Whittingham, Kalen DeBoer, Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning, Luke Fickell. Look at Hugh Freeze at Auburn, Mark Stoops at Kentucky, Jeff Brom at Louisville, Mike Norvell at Florida State, even with the issues they have. So many coaches could do infinitely better with this talent. And because of Dabo Swinney's stubbornness, because of, let's call it what it is, his pride and his ego, Clemson is not going to go anywhere. Heck, they could win the ACC. But if they win the ACC, that's more of an indictment to how bad the conference is and how weak that conference is, rather than him being an elite head coach. He is not the coach that he was in the mid-late 2010s. He's not. The game at this point has passed him by. Period. Amen. And that's the Clemson angle. The Georgia angle is Kirby Smart is the best coach in the country. He has one of the best staffs in the country, and he has the best team in the country. And out of all 130-something FBS teams, number grows every year. Soon it will shrink because I guarantee you the Power 4 and Group of 5 in the next decade or few decades will split apart, sadly. But it'll probably happen. Out of all 130-plus FBS teams, there's only one team I think right now who could beat Georgia. The other team in the preseason who I thought had a decent chance against Georgia because of all their athletes and the fact that they theoretically had depth at every position and a limitless ceiling at every position was Oregon. But Oregon looked terrible against Idaho. Alabama's the only other team who I think right now could beat this Georgia team. That's it. Georgia, Bama. It's exactly how it was in 2021 when they played for the national championship. Same thing in 2017. And in 2022, some would argue that Alabama was better than Ohio State and Michigan that year. I disagree, but they never matched up with each other, and Alabama lost 2 games in the regular season. But the Bulldogs are the number 1 team out of those top 2, in my mind. And they put up 34 points and 447 yards on what will probably be a top 10, top 15 defense. At very worst, a top 25 defense. That's losing their center, Cedric Van Pran, NFL player. Amarius Mims, their tackle, NFL player, first rounder. Their tight end, Brock Bowers, first rounder, NFL player. And that's with Trevor Etienne being out and them losing their top backs from last season. A lot of change on that offense in specific areas, and their key portal addition on offense couldn't play. He was suspended for a game. And they came out and they mauled Clemson. They killed them. They murdered them in front of the entire world to see. And Clemson couldn't do anything about it. They were helpless out there, ladies and gentlemen. And I think that after this game, it's as clear as day that if there's any team who can compete potentially with this team, it's Alabama. We'll see what they do to each other in Week 5 when they match up. That's a game that I will definitely be previewing on here, even though we are primarily a Big Ten channel. And look, guys, I don't want to say that it's a lock that this team is going to win the national championship because it's way too early. But that would be one of my bolder overreactions, for entertainment purposes mostly. But I think there may be some grain of truth to it. I mean, you look at ESPN's FPI, Alabama and Georgia are in the top, Alabama and Texas, rather, are in the top 3 with Georgia. and then there's a significant drop-off to number 4, Ohio State. And I think Texas and Alabama, along with Ohio State and Penn State, Notre Dame, and the teams that are below in FPI, have more questions both on their roster and coaching staff than Kirby Smart does at Georgia. He's been with the Bulldogs for nearly a decade. He's stacked elite recruiting classes on top of elite recruiting classes, and he develops them well. Georgia right now is the nation's best program. They have a 43-2 record since the beginning of the 2021 season, and the 2 of their losses came to Alabama teams who were in the college football playoff and top 6, top 5 teams that year. 2021 Alabama was certainly the second best team in the country. 2023 Alabama, not the second best team in the country, but they got better as the year went on, and you can never count out Nick Saban. Those only 2 losses are to a coach who retired because he himself made the conscious decision and did not have the enormous pride and ego to remain in a college football world that he didn't think he could tackle to perfection. That's how you know Nick Saban's not just a good coach, but also a good and wise man. The MVP of this game is running back Nate Frazier. Now, I didn't find a picture for Nate Frazier that I could appropriately Photoshop to fit him in on the right square with the Georgia logo that's on your screen. But I'd mention him anyway because as a true freshman coming in with 11 attempts, 83 rushing yards, and a touchdown, he had himself an absolute day. And I admire players who can step up and who can face adversity and who just come out there and ball. And that is what Nate Frazier did. Nate Frazier had, again, 83 yards rushing on 11 carries, a touchdown. He averaged over 7 yards per carry with a long of 40. And they just continued to run him and do well with him. And he'll find himself in the rotation along with Trevor Etienne after performing well against a defensive line in Clemson that includes Peter Woods and TJ Parker. Peter Woods had a sack, 2.5 TFLs, and he was getting pressure, doing well in the run game and the pass game. And Clemson's defense, again, is a great unit. But Nate Frazier did his job. He excelled. And even when you take out that 40-yard run, it's still 10 carries for 43 yards, averaging about 4 yards per pop, and he had a touchdown. So he can break away and get big gains, but he can also be consistent on the ground in a running back room that lacked Trevor Etienne. And they needed Etienne this year because they lost. It wasn't, I forget exactly who they lost, pardon me, but 2 good running backs, one of them being Dejon Edwards, the other one, his name escapes me. I don't think it was Kendall Milton. Maybe it was. I actually think it was, but I don't know. Correct me in the comments. I happily accept correction. Carson Beck, 23 of 33 for 278 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also 19 yards scrambling. You could include him up here in that MVP conversation. I thought Peyton Woodring, 55-yarder. And when it happened, I called that he would make it. I was at work, and some coworkers are saying, this is insane. Will he make it? And I'm thinking, yeah, Peyton Woodring is a pretty good kicker. I think he's an All-American caliber kicker. He should make this. And lo and behold, he did. And he had some extra leg to go along with it. He put up the 2 field goals in the first half for Georgia that gave them a significant enough lead over Clemson to where, let's say, the offensive struggles continued in that second half. Well, again, Clemson only scored 3 points, and Georgia's defense was on point, and they probably, even with struggles that they had, Georgia just has enough talent on offense to where they probably would have scored at least 1 touchdown if everything went in the worst possible way for the Bulldogs and Kirby Smart. So this is an absolutely impressive performance by Georgia. There's no question about it. I don't know if I'd call it the most impressive performance of week 1 because I didn't even have Clemson ranked in my top 25. I don't even think they, from my view, would be power rated appropriately as a top 25 team. Meanwhile, I thought Georgia was power rated number 1 and fairly better than even the next best team behind them. So to me, a little bit sluggish to start off with on Georgia's end, but they finished strong, and that's what matters with a 31-point win when they were only favored by about 2 touchdowns. So It's certainly one of the more impressive performances to kick off the college football season, and that was with Georgia probably playing a B or maybe, dare I say it, C-plus level game, with ETN being out and their offense adjusting rather early. A lot of questions for Clemson, some questions for Georgia, but I think those will more so be answered with time rather than with Clemson, where you don't know if the questions will be answered in a positive or negative way. Thank you for watching this cut of Touchdown Talk. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, comment your thoughts down below, and share this video around to other college football fans. I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members for sponsoring this channel and video. Thanks to Crash2488 and Brasco Rascal for being Heisman members. Thanks to Chris Lane, Connor Little OH, Ismar, and Tyler Nye for being All-American members. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for being all conference members. If you want direct message access to me, and also after 6 months of membership, free signed College Football with Sam merchandise delivered to your door, merchandise of your choosing, I may add, sign up as a Heisman member for $25 a month and stick around for 6 months. All American membership is $10. All conference membership is $5. If you want merchandise regardless, check out my merchandise store via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. It's high quality stuff. I wear it for all of my streams, and that's because it's comfortable, high quality, athletic, stretchy. It's really good clothing, and I encourage you to check out my merchandise store along with my Patreon page, which are in the links in the description and in the pinned comment. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.